It makes me sick how uncomfortable it's getting for many of them, and I do not stand for that at all, and I will call that out. But I got no love for the Israeli government, and there's every piece of evidence to see that. Look no farther than the fact that this was reported, I believe, in Israeli outlets, American outlets. You know, obviously there's fog of war stuff, but the Israelis were spying on the Trump administration's communications with Iran, where they're trying to talk about peace. And Netanyahu called Trump, reportedly, to make sure he didn't negotiate peace. Fuck you. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Great Society Show. I am Julian Dorey.
And I'm Joey Deef. How you doing?
How you doing? We got some pretty important things going on in the world right now, but we always do like to have fun here. That said, there's certainly going to be some serious moments today, as there has to be anytime we cover this Epstein case or those aforementioned current events, because shit is going crazy out there, and I am genuinely worried about where this could lead, and I'm going to get into the whole historical theorizing as to why that is the case for this particular Iran situation versus, say, the Ukraine war, which is also something that was a huge problem when it first came up and continues to be a problem, but does not have the same ramifications as what we are facing right now. But I had talked last week on this now weekly extra episode we have going, where Deef and I sit here and break down the Epstein files and go through things that are going on in the world. I had told you that everything we are seeing, including what was at the time an impending attack on Iran, was nothing but a distraction. And it was a distraction from what is the biggest story of my lifetime in these Epstein files, something where, you know, we see behind the candelabra, if you will, and we understand exactly, I shouldn't even say exactly, but we have an understanding that the way the world works is actually closer to the way the people who used to be labeled conspiracy theorists did theorize, and in many cases correctly so, at least on a 30,000-foot view in the air way. But before I get into this, I did something pretty interesting this past weekend.
Lay it on us.
Yeah. Now, I unfortunately got to blue balls you a little bit and say I can't go into full details yet. You're going to be able to see this end of April, beginning of May on a TV network. But I had mentioned I was going to go out and film something regarding Epstein with Andy Bustamante, who is your resident on camera, still in the CIA spy. Certainly never left the agency, but friend of mine as well. What I will say is that I was genuinely shocked by what we ended up filming. And they're going to have me talk about it in the build-up to when it actually comes out and talk about it in detail, so I'm not going to go there yet, but I will put it this way. One of the major pieces of criticism that Andy Bustamante fairly gets, by the way, very fair that he gets this, outside of being actively in CIA and possibly propagandizing for them, certainly. But one of the major pieces of hate that he gets out there is that he has never seen a conspiracy theory that he couldn't poo-poo and go like this and be like, no, it's just incompetence. It's not real. I will just put it to you this way. When we sat down and filmed what we filmed about Epstein, I was stunned to see him go completely the opposite way. I mean, he went to what would have previously been described as like 4chan land. Now it's much more normal in a way. But I was sitting there genuinely stunned on camera going, you of all people are telling me that you're finding this about the case. You, Andy. Like, what the fuck? What got into you? I love it, but what got into you? And I'm not going to say yet what we investigated, other than it was something to do with, how can I say this? How can I say this without giving it away?
I don't know if you can.
I don't know if I can either, but it had something to do with Epstein's connections and the abilities that afforded him even at his lowest moments. That's a pretty good way of putting it, right?
Yeah, and I could say that you called me afterwards, and I know when you're being very genuine about something, and you were like, "My world has been turned upside down."
Hey guys, 3 quick things. Number 1, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. It's a huge, huge help. Number 2, if you'd like to join my Patreon for early uncensored releases of the full episodes, you can join via the link in my description or in the pinned comment below. And number 3, if you'd like to join my clipping community for a chance to make content from the show and make money, you can join via the Discord link in my description below. Like, we got in there and we talked on camera about the case in general for like over an hour, of which they're going to use like 3 minutes of that. It was a great conversation. But then he laid on me what we were there to investigate, because when he asked me to do this 2 months ago, he's like, I want to do it like you do your podcast. I'm not going to tell you what specifically I'm investigating around Epstein, but let's just get in there and do it. So he lays on me what we're going to be investigating. And I was like, okay, cool. And then he did something and showed me a bunch of things, including a lot of government documents, and then began to demonstrate certain things related to those. And very slowly, I went from very back and forth talkative with him to genuinely shell-shocked and quiet. And towards the end, it was like a crisis of, I mean, it was like almost like, as it relates to the case itself, like existential. Like, what the fuck? Like, if this is the case, then nothing's real. So, wild shit. As I said, I got to blue balls you a little bit, but you're going to want to see that when it comes out. Certainly interesting. So, I think it was a cool experience. We're going to watch to see how the certain TV network cuts it up. I want to make sure that's done right, because we filmed for fucking 7 hours.
That's lame.
You know? And
they should do something with the, like, if
know.
you do an hour recording, even if they don't put it on the TV program, they should like put it on the YouTube, or like do something with it.
I think Andy, I can't confirm this fully, but just based on some stuff he was saying, I think Andy's probably talking to them about that.
Yeah.
Because he's got a big YouTube too.
Yeah.
And that would also be great for transparency, by the way, which is something, you know, Andy could definitely use some help in that department.
Yeah. Instills trust into legacy institutions.
Well, I don't think anyone's ever going to trust Andy.
But you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Even them doing that, you're like, oh, okay, I'll trust you guys a bit.
Yes.
Transparency.
Yes. So that is going to be very interesting. But this week, I'm putting out this episode on Saturday. This week on Monday or Tuesday, you are going to see the first half of the Epstein survivor sit down. I know you guys have been patient about that. That is coming now. I've had so many literally current of the moment event podcasts coming in that like I've had to get these things out. So that one with the Epstein survivor, which she was awesome, that's coming out. And then we are also going to have an episode with Chris Hansen, who is exactly the Chris Hansen you're thinking of in here. And certainly good time to have him in, given everything going on. But yeah, great guy, fun. And we had a good time.
Yeah.
Hello?
Have a seat, Chris.
I'm looking for the Julian Dorey podcast.
Is that why you're here?
That's what the transcript said.
I think Dave's got some messages that say otherwise.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, stop stealing my line.
He's the real deal, Dave.
Oh, I didn't say he wasn't. He's real as they come.
Yeah, like that guy doesn't miss a beat.
Yeah, hell of a career.
Yes.
Like, relevant as ever, you know, still doing his thing.
Yep.
Hats off.
But like I said, I'm going to get to a bunch of the Iran war breakdown at the end. And for me personally, I kind of want to put that on there as like a time capsule. I want to look back on it a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, see where the world is and see how much of it makes sense, because I do have a lot of thoughts on it and I take it very, very seriously. But, you know, John Kiriakou, when he was in here recording with me February 20th, and we put out that episode on Monday the 23rd, on that Friday, February 20th, he made his report that Trump had made up his mind to attack Iran. And he had said it would happen Monday or Tuesday. It ended up happening Friday. But everything he said about who was against it, Trump being fully mind made up, and the Joint Chiefs of Staff on board completely was correct. And John and I were both hoping that his source would be incorrect, but I knew that was probably wishful thinking. So we are now seeing where that is. And as of the time of this recording, I mean, you know, they're talking about putting boots on the ground in the Pentagon and moving the goalposts. I'll get to it later, but it is genuinely very, very scary to me. But let's get to the late and not at all great, horrible, disgusting Jeffrey Epstein and dig into this case, because we will not be distracted by any bullshit we see in the world, whether it be something dumb like throwing us probably fake alien files and not the real thing, which we need to push for the real thing eventually, but that's for another day, or something very serious like Iran, because, man, Deef, it's fucking great timing to start a Middle East war so that Twitter goes up in a bunch about everything that's happening. Wow, we got all these files floating around, and while they're deleting a lot of files too. That's pretty crazy, right?
Yeah, a lot of coincidences.
Total coincidence.
Yeah.
Total coincidence. But with Jeffrey Epstein, if you listen to my show and some of the amazing people that we've been privileged to have in here, whenever I have in people who are more on the geopolitics side, who also are studious of history, a common topic that has often come up, dating all the way back to episode 43 with Matt Kemenash, is the fourth turning. Now, some of you listening right now who are longtime fans, you have heard me explain this before. A lot of you who are listening who have found the show through the solo episodes like this in recent weeks, perhaps you haven't. So apologies to the people that have heard this before, but for everyone else, I think it's important to have some context as to what the fourth turning is. And as I say that, Deef, I just realized I forgot the names of the author. It's like Strauss and Howe, but I want to make sure I get that right. So the fourth turning is a book that was written in the mid-90s, maybe it was like 96, 97, by some historian sociologists. Yes, William Strauss and Neil Howe. One of them is deceased. The other one is still alive, and I'd like to get the other one in. But it's one of the greatest, most prescient, and also scary / optimistic, I don't really know how to describe it, books ever written. And here's why I say that. One of the problems with historians is that they'll do an amazing job researching history and going through it and reporting on it and sourcing everything and stuff like that. It's not to take a shot at them, but what will often happen is they get so immersed in studying maybe a particular period in history or, a broad range of history, depending on who they are, that this cognitive bias comes in that makes them believe that they are therefore apt to be able to predict the future perfectly. And unfortunately, what happens then is they often change the patterns that exist right in front of them without realizing that. What these guys, Strauss and Howe, did is they basically looked at history, they found a pattern that I'm going to explain in a minute, and they went like this. They picked it up, and they just, almost like, something hot and fresh out of the oven that you don't want to fuck with. They just lifted it up and then went, all right, yep, put it right there and backed away. And just said, just look at this. We're not going to change anything. We're looking at what happened. We're moving it right here. Don't blame us. Don't shoot the messenger. And what they found is that over the past 4 centuries, 3-4 centuries in particularly, though it could go back farther, and I believe they said that in the book. It's been a while since I read it. Over the past 3-4 centuries, there have been societal patterns that repeat themselves in 80 to 85-year cycles. Now, you can also, I believe, look at this in cycles around the world in particular and find a fit. But for the purposes of this conversation, we are going to talk about America, which has also been the rising empire during the time period that we are talking about. So, where do I want to start at the top here? These 80 to 85-year cycles are generational. All right, we'll start with this part. Essentially, they break it down into 4 different generations that exist roughly, 21 years at a time. So you have 4 age groups at any given time. Age 0 to 21, 22 to 43 or 44, 45 to 66, and 67 and above, okay? And each of these age groups, based on when they are born in the cycle, is given a name. So let's relate it to our current age groups that we know. The age group that is 66 and older, 67 and older right now are the boomers. And the boomers are what these guys term as the prophets, okay? These generations are going to repeat themselves every four over and over again. So the most recent prophets are the boomers. These are people that are born in the post-crisis time and rise, come of age, meaning 0 to 21, during the time when the quote-unquote empire or winners of the previous crisis is building itself up. The next generation after that, so think Gen X, are what are called the nomads. This is a generation that comes of age 0 to 21 during a time period. You see everything's in fours here, so we're in the second generation and the second time period right now. Hold that thought. They come of age during a time period called the awakening, which is like the post-boom excitement time period, and it's where society turns inward and starts to look at itself while it's now been settled as the power post-crisis and starts to look at its own wounds or its own flaws. So think the hippie movement, Vietnam, all that. That's when the nomads are growing up and coming of age. The third generation is called the heroes. And the heroes come of age, 0 to 21, during a time in which basically it's the brewing time of a crisis. So these are the millennials who were born between 1981 and around 1996, 1997. And they grow up in the time when things are starting to get frothy. They don't go all the way there, but things are starting to get to, wait a minute, this might be getting a little out of control. And you could say that while they're growing up, that time period would certainly, you couldn't say it, you will say, it's true. That time period, for example, with our millennials would include 9/11, the dot-com boom, the war in Iraq, the GWAT, if you will.
Occupy Wall Street.
Occupy Wall Street, which was post what, Deef? The financial crisis.
Yep.
And, that's kind of what it is. And it blends over into a fourth time period called the crisis period, which is the climax, if you will. And the generation that grows up during this period is the artist generation, which you can characterize as Gen Z. They are growing up during a time where things are really, really hard, and it generally scars their outlook on the world for life. If you want a recent example of that is the one before Gen Z, it would have been the silent generation who grew up in the Great Depression and World War II. Obviously, that's gonna impact how you look at things. That's why my grandma to this day, writes down how much an orange is at the store, whether it was 69 cents or 89 cents or whatever, because she's from the silent generation and that's what she knows. And so what I laid out there were the four generations and the four different cycles. If you're tracking me, what that means is that in each cycle, a generation exists in the same cycle every time, meaning the prophets, the boomers, are always coming of age post-crisis. They are always then going out into the workforce and starting to get some power in the world, meaning between 22 and 43 years old during the awakening period, right? Which can also mean a lot of success for the economy during that period, while there's a lot of civil unrest and strife. Again, think like Vietnam and all that shit, the hippie movement. And then they are in power, meaning like pre-retirement at the peak of their game during a burgeoning, frothy time building into a crisis. So when the millennials are children, and then they're retired when the crisis happens. Whenever there's a crisis, it is always the nomad generation, which is the generation coming after the prophets. So think Gen X. They are always the generation that is in power. They're between 44 and 66 years old, something like that, in that time period. And that's where we are right now, which, by the way, because ages have changed over time, so I'm going to show this pattern in a minute historically and how it matches up. Because ages have changed over time, that can also overlap now with like some boomers still being in power. Donald Trump's a boomer. Joe Biden was a boomer, right? Because people are living longer. So that does need to be taken into account. But the idea stays the same. Now you talk about this 80 to 85 year period and how that could work out. And I am bringing this back to Epstein. Trust me, just bear with me. Think about American history just dating back to the beginning of our country, which is in its 250th year right now. The Revolutionary War took place from roughly 1775 to 1783. 80 to 85 years later, the Civil War took place from 1861 to 1865. 80 to 85 years later, World War II took place for America from 1941 until 1945. 80 to 85 years later lands us smack right between 2020 and 2026, which is right where we are. Okay? This happens over and over and over again, and each crisis moment is precipitated by the buildup. You heard me say a few minutes ago that the buildup to our current crisis period, and I might have misstated like what generation that was in, so apologies if I did that, but you get the idea of like the things that lead you into the crisis moment. Over the past 25 years, we have watched our towers come down 1 mile from here in New York on 9/11. We have watched that .com boom. We have watched the Iraq War and the endless wars that crashed our economy, crashed our morale, and ended obviously horribly in a full cycle that was, I guess, capstoned by the 2021 Afghanistan pullout, which was devastating to watch. We have watched the global financial crisis happen, which not only crashed the whole economy and affected the whole world, but it also created the biggest separation of wealth gap in maybe world history. I'm saying that off the top of my head, so my statisticians out there can go check that for me. But essentially what it meant is that everyone from middle class America, which is what built America, lost all their life savings and then really had nothing to gain it back with when the economy recovered, whereas rich people who lost a lot, the elites if you will, had more money to be able to invest and put to work in the years after 2008 so that they could make the big rip up in the stock market as it happened. Then you have the political unrest, as Deef said correctly, the Occupy Wall Street movement and Tea Party movements happening at the same time that give rise to Donald Trump and that whole movement. Donald Trump versus what I will say is like a Bernie Sanders populism movement, as Bernie should have been the Democratic nominee in 2016 very clearly. Like that was what the will of the people, in my opinion, at the time, based on what we saw happen with it basically being rigged against him. And in the middle of that, by the way, you have 2014 Maidan with Russia and Ukraine that sets the stage for what would become the Ukraine war, which broke out in late February 2022. Now, I thought of something when I was filming with Andy, and I couldn't believe I hadn't thought of this before, because I always think about the fourth turning and how things get kicked off. And I thought about the last cycle with World War II. And I was asking myself, roughly, what was the pre-crisis frothy moment that set everything off? It was actually something that was like way beyond the pale. Because, you know, by the way, Deef, you can patternize this stuff. Like the 08-09 financial crisis, what was 80 years before that?
Black Monday.
Well, that was 87, but you're on the right track. The stock market crash.
Stock market crash
in 29. Yeah, exactly. So even like the financial precipitations can be right in line. Like that's how weirdly simulated we are as humans. So I was thinking of what was the moment that bled open World War II? And there were two answers. The first one is the Treaty of Versailles, which happened right after the conclusion of World War I. It basically fucked Germany into the next century, which, to be clear, Germany needed to pay for World War I and what they had done. I mean, they had also inflated the fuck out of their currency. I mean, there was a mess there, but it set them up to fail. And if you read Devil's Chessboard, guys like John Foster Dulles and Alan Dulles were very involved with that. And it created a power vacuum in Germany where a guy like Hitler could end up rising. And that's obviously a huge breaking point. But then I thought some more. And I tried to think of like a person. And I was like, holy shit, the answer's always been there. It's like something we all know in passing. Franz Ferdinand, the Archduke of Austria-Hungary, however the fuck you say it. When you look at World War I, and by the way, I would highly recommend people go back and listen to Dan Carlin's full podcast on World War I, one of the greatest things I've ever heard in my life. It is the forgotten war, and I don't want to understate it either. Like, We always talk about World War II, which is the war to end all wars at this time. But World War I, not only was it no joke, it was brutal. Can we actually pull up the deceased numbers in World War I, Deef? Because that's actually really, it's crazy. And the percentage of the earth at the time, 40 million total casualties, wounded and dead, with deaths ranging from 15 to 22 million. And the world was smaller than it was during World War II. So, I mean, it was devastating what happened. But when the Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated in 1914, it set off a series of events that put into place World War I and caused places like Germany to declare war on Russia, and everything goes. It's not like Franz Ferdinand sitting in that fucking car, or I don't even think it was a car. It was a horseback carriage or whatever. It's not like, he fucking knew, damn, if they hit me, like the whole world's going to end and we're all going to war. But that is the butterfly effect, the domino that happened. And so I went back to the fourth turning and I thought about the patterns and I thought about all the things that built up to where we are in the current crisis period right now, which Strauss and Howe, by the way, to give them credit, in the book, The Fourth Turning, this, again, is written in 95 or 96, Steve, something like that.
Yep.
They said there would be a major financial crisis. They did not know what, but some sort of crisis occurring between 2005 and 2010. They nailed that. And they said that a crisis period would occur between 2020 and 2030. So let's go back a minute. Jeffrey Epstein is found dead in his jail cell in August 2019. Okay? What happens after that, Thief?
COVID-19.
COVID-19, civil unrest to follow, the mandates, mass hysteria. Just over 2 years later, 2.5 years later, Ukraine, Russia. A year and a half after that, October 7th, and the following war in Gaza. In the middle of that, Shinzo Abe, former leader of Japan, assassinated.
Yep.
An assassination attempt happened on Donald Trump. You're talking East and West here, and Shinzo Abe was an ally in the East, by the way. That's an important distinction. Trump narrowly misses being killed on the campaign trail. We have the AI takeover come in. We have now an Iran war breaking out in the Middle East that quite literally and figuratively, all the above, separates East and West potentially. And as we are recording this right now, we don't know how much more this is going to escalate, but it is very scary, which leads to the idea that nuclear weapons, which somehow have been avoided since 1945 at the beginning of this whole cycle, by the way, are now something that's on the table. And no, they're not coming from Iran. And in the middle of all this, Jeffrey Epstein himself is clearly a part of what we have referred to many times and will continue to as the super government. SUPRA, the thing that Tucker Carlson came up with, where he describes the presidents, the world leaders, the leaders of economy, the leaders of industry as one layer below a fixer layer of wealthy people who tell those people what to do, working for a top layer, which are bankers and technocrats and the people who actually run the world silently behind the scenes. And that is symbolism for the wealth gap I already mentioned, the exponentially growing wealth gap, the ability of a small few to gather more assets of the earth than ever before, and parallels with the fall of Rome when it comes to the elite class separating from the people of an empire that has stretched too big to manage. So I was sitting with Andy and I realized, or I shouldn't say realized, I theorized that Jeffrey Epstein is fucking Franz Ferdinand. That set off the whole kit and caboodle of things we've seen. And I actually want to give a ton of credit to Eddie Bravo, who, in the words of Tim Dillon, friend of the show, he's actually been following because like you have public subscribers, and Alessi texted me like a year ago. He's like, "Yo, Eddie Bravo subscribed to us." So shout out Eddie Bravo. But Eddie went on a podcast with Joe Rogan in 2024 and predicted that World War III would happen, which, to be clear, it hasn't happened yet. However, there would be World War III burgeoning from the Middle East as a result of the elites getting exposed in the Epstein pedo scandal and wanting to cover it up as a distraction. Oh my God, where have we heard that before? So far, so good, Eddie. So shout out on that. But we are seeing all this come together at once. And also, Deef, I have 2 links right up there. Let's pull up the first one, the billionaire link. This is a quick overview of an idea. So rather than I'm reading off the screen right now from a screen grab that was posted on Twitter by Grizzy. Is that right, Deef?
Yep.
Okay, so rather than just solely a U.S. phenomenon, Oxum's paper demonstrates that a rise in oligarchy is undermining societies worldwide. Think elites. Oxfam's fund reports finds the collective wealth of billionaires last year surged by 3.5 trillion, almost equivalent to the total wealth held by the bottom half of humanity, 4.1 billion people. Wow. How could that possibly end badly? The number of billionaires topped 3,000 last year for the first time, with the richest, Elon Musk, becoming the first ever to surpass $500 billion. More on that in a second. Billionaires are 4,000 times more likely to hold political office than ordinary people. The $3.5 trillion rise in billionaires' wealth would be enough to eradicate extreme poverty 26 times over. This is what happens when society splits down the middle. Now, as just a quick aside, I want to come back to Elon Musk. We've talked about him on here. We will talk about him again. He still hasn't answered questions related to his emails with Jeffrey Epstein. We read them in episode 381. It doesn't appear he went to the island. We do have proof in the files that he did meet with Epstein, though. And obviously, he was going back and forth with him personally in emails, which is not a great look. And I do think he has to answer for that. Elon Musk is also a guy who bought X, and regardless of what you think of his opinions or whatever, you know, that platform and social media in general was censoring the shit out of people. And since he did that, it is inarguable that not only did that clearly change X, it has, in addition to some other things happening since then, cleared things on other platforms as well. I can see things on Instagram that never would have passed even 2 years ago or a year ago.
Definitely.
And I don't take that for granted. That may not hold up, but I give Elon, whether he's the richest guy in the world or not, a ton of credit for that. That said, Elon Musk doesn't shut up about the Ukraine war. And I got no problem with that. We've been funding the shit out of that. There's almost 2 million casualties there. It's a mess. It should not be understated what a mess that is and a failure of the world to fix that situation and actually try to come to a peace solution. Elon Musk talks about it all the goddamn time. As of the time of this recording on Thursday evening, again, this episode's coming out Saturday, I've not heard one word about this Iran war. Not one word. And that's really interesting to me. Really interesting. Now, friend of the show, Riz Verk, has been on the show a couple times. Great guy. Simulation theorist from MIT. Put out a reply tweet where someone talked about that, where he said, refer to Elon's episode on Rogan, I guess the latest one, where he said there are certain things that if he talked about it, he believes he would be assassinated.
That's good. And wasn't XAI meeting to consult with Israel like a month ago? That's real. I think I had showed that to you when we were hanging. And he's trying to consult them to make Israel, quote, like the AI superpower.
Yes,
I could pull that up too.
No, you are correct. Netanyahu talked about he had a personal meeting with Elon Musk to make Israel AI superpower. It's just an AI superpower, I should say. It's just fascinating to me that as of this time, he's not commenting on that because, again, this is no slight at the lives being lost in Russia and Ukraine right now, which, again, is a disgrace that's still going on. But, like, this is a way bigger deal, potentially, in Iran. If it somehow de-escalates, and I will give credit to parties involved, if it does, I would be very happy if that is what happens here. Then we can avert some issues. But we're talking some civilizational things here. So to round out the point about Franz Ferdinand, if you've ever seen that meme, and I know Elon's used this meme of the dude standing in front of the domino.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can find that picture, Dave.
I'll find it, yeah.
And you just see all the stacks behind him, and it's like when you're about to push something and the whole butterfly effect's going to fucking blow up and explode.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, Deep's got it right here. where the guy's about to push it over. So everyone sees that. That's Epstein. That was Franz Ferdinand. But that's Epstein.
Yeah.
You want to go back to the revolution and see the build up to that? The World War I before the revolution looked no farther than the French-Indian War. French and Indian War. Everything happens in these patterns. That's why the fourth turning is so effective. But I had never thought of Epstein in the context of the fourth turning, and now I can't fucking unsee it. So keep your eye on that. And again, I'm hoping to see us avert the final coming of a crisis that we're talking about. When you have, by the way, when you have people talking about biblical war, and I'll talk about this more later, that scares the shit out of me.
Me too, brother.
All right? This is where I want everyone to practice their organized religion freely. And again, most people use that for a great thing and to get inner peace, and I think that's awesome. But when war decisions, as they unfortunately have always been made, are being made on the basis of betting that you're right about the afterlife, which if there's one thing we all have fucking in common besides the fact that we're going to die, it's that we don't know what happens when we do. But you're going to bet on that with people's lives here on this earth. Fuck that, and fuck you. Now, Deef, now that we got that out of the way, my favorite, and I say this seriously, my favorite performer of all time came out of retirement involuntarily this past week. And that is not an endorsement of this person as a person. In fact, if there is a hell, he's on a one-way trip there. But I am telling you, there is no greater show on earth than William Jefferson Clinton.
Yep.
Because this is a man who, even with his shaking, I don't know, pre-Parkinson's old man fucking charm that he still has on, he says things in a way and in a delivery and in a physical act to the point that, yes, we know it's a complete lie. It's a verifiable lie. But you believe that he believes it.
Yeah.
And God damn it, he does. So first of all, I do actually have to say this because last week there was something I didn't know. And I said it, and we're always going to be fair. I'm going to correct the record because Hillary actually pointed this out because both Hillary and Bill were deposed this week by the House GOP at their home in Chappaqua to go through their ties to Jeffrey Epstein. But I had said it was very disappointing to me that elites like Wexner and the Clintons were getting to do their depositions on their turf. Now, I still haven't checked out the Wexner thing and the backstory there, but I can speak on the Clintons. The Clintons wanted to do this in D.C., and it was actually James Comer from the Republican Party who said, no, you're going to do it behind closed doors in Chappaqua at your house. And so Hillary complained about that immediately after the deposition publicly. And I actually was like, you know what? Yeah, she's right. I would have rather seen this done in D.C. just like everyone else too. But that was a decision of the opposing party. I don't know why. Mm-hmm. They should have to face the music just like Pam Bondi did, just like all these people do and should. Obviously, they're looking to call Bill Gates and all these different people now, Sarah Kellen, like before the committee over, I guess, like April, May, and June. We're hearing that. I guess like more to come on the confirmations, but like they're going to go in front of the public right now as it stands. These guys should go in front of them too, but it was apparently not the Clintons' decision for once. There was also, by the way, before I get into some of the videos to break this down, Thief, there was a story in The Atlantic that gave a behind the scenes, and you know, I read everything. Obviously, there is left and right bias depending on any publication you're reading, and there's so much information floating around about this case that anything you do have to take with a grain of salt where it's not proven by a fucking EFA and a bunch of numbers document in justice.gov. Okay, so let's just say it out front. But this article looked into the backstory of how this came to be, like this story going public and going through Congress via Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna. And I've said it multiple times now, because obviously the Trump administration is in power. Trump is involved with the story because he knew Jeffrey Epstein, and the cover-up's been gross. But, once again, give the Democrats zero credit here. All of their administrations have covered this up, starting with the Clintons, who were fucking a part of it. All of their congressmen and senators have covered this up for years. This story actually, again, from The Atlantic, which is more of a left-leaning outlet, reported literally what their calculation was behind the scenes. Ro Khanna was being told not to do it by people because he would appear as a conspiracy theorist. And to his credit, he was like, fuck that. It's not a conspiracy. It's real. This guy existed. He raped a lot of kids, and no one's answered for it. They got to answer for it. So credit to him. Obviously, Thomas Massie did the same thing, and they cover that in this story. Thomas Massie coming from the right side. But when it talked about, it was showing all the resistance Massie got in the Republican Party, which was really gross, but we've already kind of outlined that, so I don't need to go into that again. When it talked about the Democrats, though, all the older Democrats were against doing anything about it and wrote it off as conspiracy crap, which, very cold take, guys. The younger Democrats, who are less connected to Clinton, in fact, not connected at all, only got on board when they saw that internal polling showed that it would be a popular thing to do, which is just such a fucking, that's what they reported in the piece. If that's not such a fucking indictment on Washington, D.C., that's why when you see guys like Ted Lieu, who lies like a mattress every time he opens his fucking whore mouth, when you see a guy like that getting W's here because he gets to read from a document that already has the answer for him and it's politically expedient for him to do so, fuck him. I'll look at the information because unfortunately sometimes he's reading the information. Sometimes it's actually real. But we're not giving these people credit. You don't get to cover things up for 3 decades, 4 decades, whatever it's been, and then be like, oh, well now, now we're doing it. No, it's just expedient politically now for you to do it. And I just found that story, again, if true, it's from a lot of reports from sources on the inside, so I encourage you guys to go read it yourself and make your own conclusions. But I found that story particularly stomach-turning, and just another example of why when I have to drive anywhere within the area code of Washington, D.C., I make sure the navigator takes me on the roads that go around it. Fucking hate that place. No disrespect to the people that live there. Yeah. I'm sure you like it.
It's all right.
You won't find me there very much. Okay, I think I've been there like twice in my life. That's 2 times too many.
Yeah, it's all right. It's DC, you're not.
Don't do that, Deef. You know you hate it.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that I've only been there once or twice. It ain't nothing special. You're not missing much.
Okay. Can you pull up the first video? We need no sound.
This is a good video.
And make it full screen. This is just all time. Which, stuff. By the way, put it full screen and keep it on pause. We gotta
look at the first frame.
Yeah, we gotta look at the optics here. So real quick, before I go into this video, you see the woman to the right there?
We know her.
You know what her name is?
Cheryl
Mills. Cheryl Mills was basically like Hillary Clinton's chief of staff when she was Secretary of State. She was Bill Clinton's attorney back in the impeachment days. She'd been around them forever. Let's X out of the full screen for a second. We're going to hold that for a second. I know you're fucking ready to roll. But, you would think, you would just think, you would even give the Clintons like this grace of credit that like they would think about this ahead of time. If you're going to go do subpoenaed testimony on your relationship with Jeffrey Epstein that includes 25 to 27 flights, a lot of hot tubs, places around the world, women in pictures with you, including some who are underage, and 17, 18 known trips into your White House through the back door. Not a good look. By the way, they helped fund the Clinton Initiative. We'll get to that in a minute. If you're going to do that, and put on your performance, if you will, Do you know how many great qualified lawyers someone like the Clintons could not only afford to hire because they're worth hundreds of millions of dollars, but they are connected to hire? You and I both know it's unlimited, okay? Yet they pick Cheryl Mills, who of all people, in addition to being at the middle of the fucking email scandal with Hillary, in addition to being at the middle of the Benghazi scandal with Hillary, in addition to being in the middle of the impeachment scandal, which involved a fucking blowjob in the Oval Office with a woman who was very, very young, more on that later, you would think that alone would be enough to be like, maybe we'll get someone else besides Cheryl to sit next to us on this camera. But it's worse than that. You got the email, Deef?
Yeah, I'm pulling it.
Cheryl Mills, I sent it to you in text. Okay. Cheryl Mills is in the Epstein files. Like, you literally can't make this shit up. She is in the Epstein files talking with her girl, Ghislaine Maxwell, and going back and forth. The other one, Steve, to actually show the emails. There were 3 I sent you. But she's going back and forth with Ghislaine Maxwell, who is at the very middle of the testimony they're doing. He has that up on the screen right now. So what is the first one? To Cheryl Mills from GMAX. Hey, I'm currently in my bikini in Palm Beach. I'm trying not to make you jealous or anything. Carol is great. Actually, she may be gone for too long, as she may come to work well if my deal goes through. I'm not dumb. It took me so long to make one girlfriend. I'm not prepared to lose her. And Cheryl goes, what did she respond? Is today really your birthday? It's your birthday of one of my greatest friends, and it would not at all be surprising that you shared it. So happy birthday, darling. I'll have to do a bit of thinking. That's from Cheryl, right? Mm-hmm. Hate for you being in Palm Beach. If it weren't your birthday, I'll catch you. I'll call you what you really are for being there. I don't even know what that means. But basically, they're going back and forth as friends. So you would think the Clintons would be like, Cheryl, set this one out. We'll just hire any other fucking attorney from New York City. And then Cheryl Mills, here's another email Deef just pulled up. Cheryl Mills, subject, you are unbelievable, to what appears to be Ghislaine Maxwell. Actually, I don't want to say that because this one's redacted. This is a separate email. But it is to someone redacted, which is interesting. But Cheryl Mills says, only you can take a picture that makes me look good. Thank you. I love you, XO. Not ideal. Not ideal to have her in there for sure. But let's go back to the video I blue balls to everyone with Deef. This is William Jefferson Clinton with his old man charm being handed pictures. Being handed pictures with Jeffrey Epstein from over the years. And I love how, now, because he's older and has, a lot of health problems, especially his mouth. So he's got
the old man glasses.
He's got the
glasses.
Yep. But play this. I tweeted this out the other night. And then a lot of people were tweeting it out. A little plagiarism going on there. But she tries to take it away from him and goes, don't look at this, Bill. And he's like, nah, give it back. Give it back. Motherfucker is reminiscing on the good old days. He is looking at this going, oh my God, that was a great time out in Bahrain. I remember Jeffrey, we were getting after it. Wow, look at that. And he crosses his arms. Just like, what a memory. That's good right there, Deef. So, I will say this about Bill Clinton. If there's one person who has ever given absolutely zero fucks, besides Donald J. Trump, it's Bill Clinton. These are two guys in that respect, two peas in a pod. But Bill Clinton also said something really interesting about his relationship with Ghislaine Maxwell that is tying right into the supra-government idea. It is the second link there. You know what one I'm talking about, Deef. Let's pull that up and allow President Clinton to do the talking on it. Full screener. Boom. Boom.
Was her friend, not Epstein's friend. Is that accurate?
I'd say that it was accurate to say that I felt closer to her than to him.
To Ghislaine.
And for the record, why was that?
Because I had seen her more, and because she was very good friends with Evelyn Rothschild and his wife Lynn. whom I knew and was in regular touch with.
She stated that President
Okay, that's
Clinton
good.
was her.
So there's also that pause at the end where he stares him down, whom I knew and was in regular touch with. Former United States president who also presided over probably, like, to this point, economically, socially, culturally, regardless of whether he was the reason for this or not. That's not what I'm saying. But he presided over the 1990s, which I would say was probably the best time in American history to this point. Being in regular touch with Evelyn de Rothschild and saying it so openly, just as we saw Wexner say that so openly, just as we have seen them so openly hiring one fixer named Jeffrey Epstein to do their bidding around the world and tell people like Peter Thiel that he works for them, and then he's correct in saying that. I'm referring to Jeffrey Epstein's email to Peter Thiel in 2016 where he specifically says that. It doesn't exactly help the tamp down the conspiracy theories, if you will, about bankers' wars and things like that. It's just very interesting to see a name of a prominent banking family that we know the history of, that people generally never fucking say out loud, people who operate in the shadows. It's very interesting to see it actually unforcibly, explicitly mentioned by such powerful people on camera left and right recently. Les Wexner did not have to bring them up in his deposition. He brought them up personally when they were asking him about why he hired Jeffrey Epstein. He mentioned that he spoke to, I forget which Rothschild it was. It might have been Evelyn, actually.
David?
No, it might have been Evelyn, but don't quote me on that, which is exactly who Clinton just said. That's pretty interesting. And he mentioned how, he said Ellie de Rothschild. So I think that's the same person, and he volunteered that information. Clinton just volunteered. He didn't have to say that, but he did. That's fascinating to me. Very fascinating to me. You see you know what, Deef?
Yeah. What do you think of that?
Let's take a look at this one. Because he got caught on this one. Pause it, and let's get volume before we start it so we can get the full question. All right, volume's there, full screen, boom, go.
The witnesses who testified in the Epstein cases that Epstein said, you quote, like them young. Why would Epstein say that about you?
Are you asking his opinion?
Look at the mouth.
You're asking him to think about why Mr.Epstein would say
Correct.
something about him?
Why would Epstein say that
So
about
she's
the
asking
president?
you to try to be in Mr. Epstein's mind and guess at what Mr. Epstein would have thought about.
Clinton likes them young, referring to girls.
First of all, that's not true.
What's not true?
That I have any interest in underage,
I didn't say underage. I said young.
but it's still not true.
Is an intern young?
Yes,
Okay.
at my age, anybody younger than I am.
Did you
is
know
young.
Jeffrey Epstein instructed a witness to deny you were ever on his island?
He didn't have to since I was never there.
Did you ever travel to Zorro Ranch?
Is that the one in New Mexico?
Yes.
No.
Okay. Have you ever flown on
Looked
anyone
away.
else's private jet 26 times or more for overseas trips?
I have flown as many miles on other jets, but never with as many stops.
He knows the
How
miles.
many other people's planes have you used, like Epstein 26 times or miles, etc.?
I don't know. I did with Steve Bing, who's now deceased, and probably with 4 or 5 others.
Okay.
Interesting.
So maybe about a half dozen billionaires total. So how many dinners did you have with
at that
Ghislaine
shake.
Maxwell or Jeffrey Epstein in attendance?
She's asking to the best of your recollection.
I have no idea.
Okay. Did you
There
ever
were too
discuss
many.
sexual misconduct allegations made against you with Epstein or Maxwell?
Never.
Did Epstein or Maxwell ever offer to help manage or silence women who made sexual misconduct allegations against you?
No.
Did Epstein or Maxwell ever offer financial support directly or indirectly
locked
to
in.
legal defense funds related to impeachment proceedings or civil actions against you?
Not to my knowledge.
Do you think a young girl massaging a president is unusual?
So are you asking his opinion?
Well,
You're
he was
asking his
massaged by
opinion.
a young woman. I'm asking if he thinks it's unusual that a president, sitting president of the United States, leader of the free world, that
So I'm
it's
sorry,
unusual.
are you speaking to, are you talking to the instance of
Yes, is it unusual that
the
a young
back
woman would be
massage
massaging
that occurred while he was not president? I'm just trying to understand. You said a president of the United States?
former president?
Thank you. Just trying to make sure we're correcting the
Are you
time frame.
filibustering?
No, I don't need
Okay.
to. I'm actually trying to make
I
sure
think
that
I'm
as
pretty
you,
clear. He said he
you
was
said he was a
young-
sitting president.
Excuse me, could we just please go one at a time? Thank you.
You said a sitting president. I want you to be clear so that when he answers
former
you,
sitting
the
president. How
record
do
is
you want
clear.
to do it? Is it unusual?
I have no idea if it's unusual.
Objection calls for speculation.
I figured. Did you ever think that all these women around Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell was odd, unusual, weird, or creepy?
There weren't all that many around when I was there.
How many would you say is not all that many?
I think on this big plane that was working long hours, having 2 to 4 people on there, I thought was, as far as I knew, they were all helping.
Flight attendants in tank tops and jeans, right?
No,
Do you believe you were a victim of a Jeffrey Epstein intel operation? Do you think that you might have
see
been
his forehead
caught up
change
in some
there?
of what he was maybe potentially doing?
Excuse me, Congressman, which question are you asking?
I'm asking
Intel
if the-
operation?
first of all, I don't
Some type of intel operation. I'm just curious because it's been speculated on today and yesterday
understand.
that he may have been an intel asset. Do you think, perhaps knowing what we know now, the proclivity of it all, that he may have been targeting you as part of an intel operation?
I doubt it.
In 2019,
right there. That's good.
you stated
That's good.
after.
That's you could see. So when he was asked the intel question there at the end, at the beginning of that little part, his whole forehead shifted when she asked him if he had been a target. And then when he said, "I doubt it," and again, I'm not a body language expert, but these are some pretty common ones spitting out. And I'd love to get some of the body language people on YouTube to break this down. But when he said, "I doubt it," right there, he squinted his eyes real tight. Now, at the beginning of that clip, when he's asked if he likes him young and then gets wrapped around the Lewinsky right away, which he should have seen that one coming. Old Bill would have seen that one coming, but older Bill doesn't. You could see the fucking nervousness setting in, and he was getting very uncomfortable. And then he locked the fuck in. And Cheryl came in, and he was answering things real confident with that little sly look up.
Came in like his auntie.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Guy like him, he can lie like a mattress and really get himself into a mind state where he's like, all right, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to believe it. And that's what it is.
Where do you think they did that in their house?
You know, I was wondering that. It's like
Got the microphones and everything.
It's got the grand dais there.
What do you think goes through his head as they're setting up production? Like as he's like in his robe having a coffee and they're setting the table and the lights and the audio, and he's just like, fuck, they're going to try and fry me in here.
Showtime. You look mighty fine.
Yeah, it makes a sly
for the
comment.
interns.
Yeah. He's just a dog.
Man. And Deef, we got to play the Mark Middleton thing. So Mark Middleton is the White House aide who was directly connected to many of the visits of Jeffrey Epstein in the White House, who unalived himself by hanging himself. I'm not laughing at the fact that he's dead. I'm laughing at the circumstances. Believe it was, we're going to find out in the clip in a second, but hanging himself from a tree while simultaneously taking a shotgun to his chest, which, I mean, what an acrobatic way to leave this earth, if I may say so myself. Let's play this right here, Deef. Because, like, man, oh, man.
Are you aware that Mr. Middleton committed suicide
Yes, I am.
in 2022? He was found dead at Hefner Ranch, approximately 30 miles from his home in Little Rock. He was discovered hanging from a tree by an extension cord around his neck with a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the chest. So he was shot and hung.
He's like, yeah, he nods. Yes.
Do you have any information that leads you to suspect that he did something other than commit suicide?
No.
Okay.
Do you have any concerns that
he wanted to say
that
something
this
else.
was in relation to his knowledge or relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, given the date?
But the president has
Of the
already
suicide?
testified to the fact that he was unaware that Mr. Epstein was visiting the White House. So are you asking him then as to what he would have known?
I'm asking, when you heard about the death, knowing about the things that have been, at this point, it's all over the news, seeing that he has committed suicide. Have you ever had any conversations with people about whether or not that there's any relationship between the two?
Oh, no. No one's ever suggested it to me.
Okay. Thank you.
Go to Google, motherfucker. Yeah, that was, I mean, they really came with hardballs. And like we were listening to Nancy Mace earlier when she was questioning him, she didn't stutter once. I mean, I was very impressed with how on the ball a lot of the footage I heard was from the people interviewing him. And yeah, something like that should be brought up. People joke about the Clinton body count, but people die around them, and they die in very weird circumstances, including that one, I think, being the weirdest. Like, oh yeah, he hung himself with an extension cord and shot himself in the chest. Sure, that's logical. But there is another subplot that has happened over the past couple weeks with Bill Clinton that is completely inexplicable to me, and it's very suspicious, and it involves Donald Trump. Donald Trump and Bill Clinton, we know, were friends at one point. We know they're both dogs. You know, it's not illegal to be a dog, but it's certainly illegal to be a dog if it's around underage women. So that's
around puppies.
Yeah.
Understand? You could be a dog around some other dogs, but not around them puppies. Sorry. All right, let's bring it back, folks. Reel it back in.
Anyway, that was
good though.
It was
pretty good.
It was good. It was good. It's fun because, like, you gotta have fun in life, even when things are very, very bad. But it is what it is. That said, Donald Trump and Bill Clinton could not possibly be friends after Trump ran for president, because Trump decided immediately upon running in 2015 to turn his guns on Hillary and use those guns also, and I mean that figuratively, not literally, to go after Bill. I mean, when Trump was even late in the campaign, when he was caught with the grab 'em tape, his apology video 15 seconds in said, "Yeah, I apologize, it's so bad, but Bill Clinton raped people. He's horrible." And if you remember, that was a Friday night. A couple nights after that was a Sunday where it was the second presidential debate. This is October 2016. I think that debate was like October 9th. And Donald Trump, showman that he is, shocked the world by holding a press conference unannounced right before the debate, which was going to be in an intimate setting where he would be about 10 feet from Bill Clinton, sitting right there supporting his wife. Business partner, I should probably say. But, you know, Donald Trump held a press conference with all the women who had publicly accused Bill Clinton of rape in the past. And it was, I've never seen anything like that in my life. And then he goes in to the debate and he has to apologize at the beginning. This is the one where he's like standing behind Hillary, like staring down at her. And it gets to him, and he's doing his like kind of half-ass apology. And then he goes, "But Bill Clinton," and I think he even pointed, "Bill Clinton raped women." And there's an image of Clinton. I don't know if we can pull it up, Dave, but Clinton-Trump debate eyes. There's an image of him staring back like death itself that Donald Trump accused him of that on international television in the biggest stakes debate in the world. And I said, yeah, that's it right there. Bill with his daughter. They were both sitting right there. And he's just staring at Trump like he just crossed a Rubicon that is beyond anything he had ever imagined. And I say that because you are never going to fucking be friends with someone like that under any circumstances ever for the rest of eternity, let alone your time here on Earth. I think we can all agree on that. Any friendship that may or may not have still existed, and it definitely didn't still exist at that point, is dead, gone, finished, you're done. And yet a very interesting subplot has happened here where out of nowhere, after over a decade of shredding the Clintons inside and out, Donald Trump went on camera 2 weeks ago in some interview with someone, I don't remember who, And he was asked about Bill Clinton, and he goes, I still like Bill Clinton. I don't like everyone going after him. I'm paraphrasing right here. But he said, I still like Bill Clinton. Like, what the fuck? What do you mean you still like Bill Clinton? The guy you called a rapist on international TV and held a press conference with all the women that have accused him? Like, no, you don't. I'm not even saying you're wrong about that either. But, like, you're not friends with him. So it's also interesting that when Bill and Hill Dog are ready to go down with the ship and take everyone with them, including Trump, that's where the Tim Dillon song comes in. Mm-hmm. We fed her to the shark. Right? You know what? World's ending, our world's ending, might as well tear it all down with us, including Donald. Like, that's our last act. You would think that he'd take the chance to do that. Defund the tape.
I hate this, but because I don't believe I should inject anything. But I do not want to leave the impression, but since there was no follow-up question, the president,
Trump,
never, this is 20-something years ago, never said anything to me to make me think he was involved in anything improper with regard to Epstein either. He just didn't.
All right, right there.
That's the truth.
Wait, leave it.
As I said earlier, the only conversation I had with President Trump about this was in the early 2000s. And I have no information that he did anything wrong. I just want it all out there. I want everybody
it all out there. Look at him holding his arm, too.
See where we are.
Okay. He said the first part right there, especially the second part, I can't confirm this, but because that was from a later point, like it cut off halfway and went to a later point from the deposition. But the first one, he interjected that. It was voluntary. He was not asked about that. But he wanted to go on record and say he had no information that Donald Trump could have possibly been attached to Jeffrey Epstein based on what he knew. So you have two guys who have publicly had beef to the nth degree that makes Diddy and 50 Cent look like child's play. That's actually that's a bad way to put it. But you know what I mean. Sorry, it is. And now they're both going out of their way to say the other guy's all right. If you are not sketched out by that or suspicious of that, I don't know what's stuck in your eyes or your ears. Unclog them. That was the craziest thing that happened because of what Trump said a couple weeks ago. That dynamic is insane. Now that's a lot of the highlights of Bill. There was another thing, like, I'm not going to get too deep into this, but it's confirmed on Gmail through the Justice Department drops of the Epstein files. But like at one point, Epstein was trying to help Clinton, fix up his SEO online and get negative stories taken out about him, which, just shows you the closeness of the relationship. And also it's in the emails where Ghislaine Maxwell talks about how she helped found the Clinton Global Initiative, talking about it very flippantly. That's confirmed as well. And we also have the picture. Can we pull it up, Deef? It's right there under Hillary of Ghislaine at the Chelsea Clinton wedding, daughter of the Clintons. She's just leaning right over, looking at Bill, taking Chelsea down the aisle. And of course, as Hillary's going to put it, had no idea she was there. So she testified that she had no relationship with Ghislaine Maxwell. I believe she called Ghislaine Maxwell a +1, and she wouldn't have known who the +1 is. And then Twitter investigators found out that she would have known who the +1 was at that wedding based on previous public comments, right? Deef, you saw that as well. I don't want to get too caught in the fucking, cat fight with that, but very clear that was a lie under oath. Wait, one more Bill Clinton thing. You see the one where it says, "Have you ever lied?"
Yeah.
This is a 9-second clip. Just pull this up. So Bill Clinton is asked the following on camera about whether or not he has ever lied under oath. We're in a deposition. Here we go.
First question I have for you, Mr. President. Have you ever lied in a deposition?
No.
Have you ever lied while under oath?
No.
Okay, so he was quite literally impeached for doing that. So that is perjury right there. But like that's what they do. They just lie. And so Hillary Clinton testifying that like she never knew Ghislaine Maxwell, also testifying that she never knew Jeffrey Epstein when Jeffrey Epstein is in the emails talking about her, talking about what she looks like in person and stuff, which she was actually flattered when she heard that part. I don't know if you saw that, Dave. She's like, I won't argue with that when he said I look better in person, which would imply he's fucking seen her a bunch in person. He is being invited to events that are in the emails that are money fundraisers for Hillary Clinton, and there are all kinds of reports, unverified at this point, that the Clintons spent a lot of time at Zorro Ranch, and you heard in an earlier video Bill Clinton explicitly deny. He was like, the one in New Mexico? Nope, never been there. Yeah. So again, we got this all on record now, and it's going to be interesting to see if evidence comes out that is directly against what they're saying, which would mean that they would be charged with perjury. And it's open to the American people because we have now all seen this, and you would think that'd be a pretty slam dunk case to be able to put through. But there's two clips of Hillary I want to go through real quick. Before I say that, Lauren Boebert took a picture of Hillary like secretly in the deposition, and Hillary flipped out about it on camera. I'm not going to play the clip because we're not going to have time to do that. But like Hillary had a right to flip out about that. Like she did it to send it to fucking Benny Johnson to get social media clout and whatever. And this was, the Republicans are the ones who asked for the private hearing. So like, it's just when politicians are trying to use their little spot for social media clout, like we're doing something wrong here. And you got to call that out. That was just fucking stupid. I mean, I appreciated getting the picture selfishly, but like, you're not helping the situation doing that. But there's a video where she's asked about Anthony Weiner in the last 50 seconds. Oh, yes. It's a long video. I particularly want to get to like 3. Yep, right there. Let's do it.
My list. That's okay. We're asking all sorts of things here. You certainly are. You certainly are. We're just trying to get the truth out to the American people. Well, that would be some clarity. Very helpful. Are you aware of any files that were on Anthony Weiner's laptop in a folder that was titled insurance, life insurance, with a zip file titled frazzled?
This is way outside the
chairman's
scope.
ruling.
This is way outside the scope.
Is this within the scope, Mr. Chairman?
If the chairman rules that it's not within the scope.
Mr. Chairman, based on what you said in the public hearing, is this within the scope?
We can go off the record for a moment.
Mr. Chairman, is this within the scope?
We'll
Go off the record and can talk.
Look at those eyes, bro. So no proof of anything there, but we have had many reports about the contents of Anthony Weiner's laptop. And obviously Anthony Weiner was married to Huma Abedin, who was and still is Hillary Clinton's right hand. She's now married to Alex Soros. That's not weird at all. And, he's definitely not playing for her team either. It's just
Oh, man.
Just saying. But that was, I mean, you see her whole body fucking contort, and she came up and got in it like she was ready to fight. And then those eyes before that off record could fucking kill. So it'll be interesting to see if that string gets pulled on more, because there have been some horrific reports about what's on there. Now, there's a lot of stuff that I have outlined that we're going to do next week instead, because there's one thing I want to hit before Iran, and talking about that is important, because as I said at the outset, they will do anything to distract from things like this. This affects everyone in government, bureaucracy. Everyone's a strong word. It affects many powerful people in government, bureaucracy, industry, and society at large, including the society of the supra-government that you don't see. And very conveniently, since the strikes in Iran that began late Friday night, early Saturday morning, we have seen the DOJ verifying deleted files. In fact, I believe, Deep, they confirmed I have a link right there where the DOJ confirmed it themselves. DOJ confirms 47,635 Epstein files have been removed per the Independent, and that is from March 4th in the middle of all this Iran hysteria.
That's great. That's great.
And they're going to continue to do this, and they're already in violation of federal law for withholding the final 3 million documents, which include a lot between the years of 1999 and 2001. That's not weird at all.
Oh, but we got some new ones.
Yeah, and then what'd they do? They're releasing 47,000 more withheld Jeffrey Epstein documents by the end of the week. Similar number, by the way. It's almost like they're trying to zero-sum game it.
Take and give.
Yeah, we'll take the ones we don't want out there, which, by the way, the public has probably screenshotted a lot of that, so too late, people. Just like they got Howard Lutnick, our friend, pictured on the island. They tried to get that one down, but J-Mail still had it. Can we Google Lutnick Island picture?
Oh,
God, I love this guy. God, I love this guy. You can't even make this stuff up. But this is what they're going to do. If we take our eye off the ball, this is what we're going to do. On this show, we are going to cover current events. We are going to go through it. That is the format that we're doing with the solo shows. And obviously, it happens sometimes with the guest shows. It's been happening more than usual recently because the world's so crazy, where we literally do a current event and cover it. And then I do a lot of podcasts that are stories and all different types of topics and having fun. Like, that's what it is. But we will continue to cover this story no matter what's going on, in addition to other things, because if we don't, that's what they want. So as we get information, we will do it because they're going to continue to try to cover this up. And there is Howard on the fucking island. That does appear to be his sons next to him on the left. I'm going to guess the guy on the right, I don't know this. I don't know either of these things, but people out there maybe can verify, is perhaps the male from the other couple he mentioned in that famous, now infamous 2012 email to Jeffrey Epstein talking about visiting the island. And Twitter sleuths were able to pinpoint the fact that in this picture, off camera, they are standing right next to the temple, the famous Epstein Island temple. And so the DOJ tried to take this down in the middle of all this Iran hysteria, by the way, like right in the build up to it. And luckily J-Mail existed and still had it, but they are going to continue to do this, just like the FBI opened a file on Epstein in 1991 and closed it in 1993. We found that out from the files, right conveniently when Bill Clinton got into office, by the way, and then never opened a case on him for another 12 years when he was finally investigated. They do all this right in front of you, and they're going to continue to do it if you accept it and allow it to happen. I will not, but I'm one fucking pebble on the water out here in YouTube. I can control what I can control, but that ain't much. It's going to require everyone else out there taking part in not letting something like this die and continuing to report on the information as we get it, which comes out like a log flume every day. Even though we're still missing so many documents that they haven't released illegally. And even though many things are still redacted illegally, including stuff that is beyond what Ro Khanna was able to confirm publicly, was redacted when he listed some of the names, like, we still have a treasure trove worth of information to piece together and put together with what we have been giving, and we have to continue to do that. So there are some people doing amazing, amazing work on Twitter, and I'm following a lot of it. I am going to be having Henry Abbott in here, by the way. Before I get to this next point, I want to say this. Henry Abbott is the guy that I've shouted out many times on the show for years, who is an NBA reporter who basically fell down a rabbit hole back in 2021 when he just wanted to investigate the links between Apollo Global, who had part of the ownership of like 2 or 3 different NBA franchises at the time, and their connections to Jeffrey Epstein. It turned into this 21-chapter odyssey on his blog True Hoop that effectively laid out the ties of Epstein going all the way back to the fucking Treaty of Versailles. And I've cited the work so many times over the years because it's incredible, but Henry finally actually heard it on the podcast with John Kiriakou and was really excited. So I finally got to talk with him. Great guy. He's going to be coming on, and we will discuss all that work and try to open up some loops so that you guys out there can work with the information that he's put together, because he also told me this. I hope he's okay with me saying this, but he's going back to the case. Look at some stuff. So
let's go.
Yeah, he just went right. The dude basically like hit a walk-off home run with the Epstein thing and then went back to reporting about the NBA.
He's just like cracking his fingers, like, shit,
and
we
now
got
he's like,
work to do.
Here we go.
Here we go again.
Here we go again. But
That's awesome.
That's going to be cool. I'm very much looking forward to it. But let's get to this Iran war. That is the word our president is using, and what's going on here. Because once again, this is a prime example of many things being true at the same time. Now, you guys have heard me talk about how much I really do take it seriously to be as journalistically balanced as possible. We obviously represent all viewpoints in this studio. There's no greater example than literally having Roya Hakakian back-to-back with Ian Carroll in episodes 307 and 308. You got the very pro-Israel and very against Israel back-to-back. Like, that is how I do my show as best I can. I'm not perfect, but I do take that part seriously, and I will continue to do that. There is a picture, though, in my studio up there. If you can hit camera 5 for a second, Deef. I don't know if people can see it. But it's up. If you're looking at me on camera 5's off. Okay. Well, there's a picture up there behind me that was in my very first studio in my parents' house as well. That shows a picture of Walter Cronkite. And by the way, Walter Cronkite took a fucking drive-by hitting the Epstein files. There's a picture of him talking with Jeffrey Epstein, which was really sad. But he was old. There's no emails regarding him or anything like that. So we're going to hope everything's okay there. That said, Walter Cronkite, for people who don't know, is the most famous newscaster to ever live. He is the man who famously delivered the glasses off remark with the broken voice, President Kennedy has died, and, told the world that the president had been assassinated officially back in 1963. But there was actually something I learned about in history class, I think in high school. Might have been middle school, but it was definitely by high school, that always stuck with me about a very difficult decision that Cronkite made. And that was, as he was reporting on the Vietnam War, eventually he started going over to Vietnam, and he saw the war for what it was, a farce and a catastrophe with corruption and all kinds of problems and an unjust war. And the evidence mounted so significantly that it got to a point to where he said there's no case for the other side. It's gone. This is what it is. And I don't even think he got to the whole fact that the Gulf of Tonkin was a false flag. He didn't even know that, I'm pretty sure, at the time. But everything else, he could see what it was. And he made a very difficult decision that I think about a lot. And that is, as a man who had been purely the news, literally in just a great voice and delivery, deliver what had happened that day without any words or interjection of opinions. This is a man who was around for the dawn of news on TV when there were 2 or 3 fucking channels. He made a decision on his reports from Vietnam to begin actually, with evidence, clearly interjecting some sort of opinion, if you will, based on that evidence that the war was unjust and wrong. And he helped get that story to the American people, who already had a huge problem with the war, but to get it over the top eventually, such that the war finally ended. And I think about this a lot because he made a very difficult slippery slope decision that I believe was the right decision, but it opened the door for things like 20 plus years later, CNN and Fox and things that call themselves news, but are really just narrative-driven bullshit. It allowed them to be born and hide behind the word news while having clear opinions that brainwash the American people in either direction. And so I've always thought about that a lot, and I knew at some point in my career there could be a moment, not as dramatic as fucking Walter Cronkite being on the ground in Vietnam. Let's not, have delusions of grandeur here, but there could be some moments where certain stories get to a point to where you have to say things based on evidence that are clearly reality, regardless of where that lands, and people are going to take it how they take it. And so I will refer to the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, and the President of the United States, Donald Trump, in particularly the first 2, though, explicitly. The third one, Donald Trump, a little more implicitly, but that's being nice. It was pretty much explicit, saying this week that the reason the United States attacked Iran is because Israel had told them, we are going in first to attack, fuck you, we're doing it, which was going to put a bullseye on United States bases and therefore our troops and our assets, and the United States therefore felt forced to attack. I say that because the evidence is clear, and it's always been clear, that this is Israel's war. This is not our own war. There is no good evidence to the contrary. Take people like Benjamin Netanyahu at their word. Benjamin Netanyahu has been bloodthirstily yearning for this. Direct quote on the yearning part. He didn't say bloodthirsty, but he said yearning. For over 40 years. He has wanted to invade Iran for over 40 years. You can run the tape of him saying Iran is a year or a week away from a nuclear bomb for the last 30 plus years. You can run the tape of him testifying in 2002 that says, you must attack Iraq and then you must attack Iran. They are developing nuclear weapons and they will be a threat to America and the world order moving forward. He's been saying this forever. And he told our president, fuck you, we're going. He told him that at the same time that our president and everyone, let's not single out Trump here, we've been listing off a bunch of people over the past several weeks, are facing the most existential crisis of the elite class in the history of probably America with these Epstein files, which implicate Israel. They certainly implicate the CIA as well, to be clear. But Jeffrey Epstein was working with Mossad, and he was working with them in a dominant capacity. I will say that. I still believe that in the evidence that he was most dominantly working with Mossad over CIA. It's very clear he was working with CIA. It's very clear that that may go back longer than I first thought, for sure. And we will continue to investigate all those loops. But this is a man who was born in America, rose up in a very weird version of the American dream, certainly had a lot of things suspiciously handed to him in this country, and worked against its interests with a foreign nation that claims at all times to be our greatest ally, that pays 93 of our 100 senators lobbying money to say those exact words, sends them over to fucking Israel to talk about how we need to protect our greatest ally at all fucking costs, and goes to primary people like Thomas Massie when they dare step out of line and say otherwise. They've done it again and again and again. Of course, I'm talking about AIPAC. There's also the Republican Jewish Coalition. And I say that because all of these organizations, unfortunately, give an awful name, an unfair name, to all Jewish people around the world. You have a radical section of them that I will refer to as like the Zionist Israeli government and their Zionist supporters around the world, which in some cases are Christians, in other cases are Jewish people, that then speak for the entire diaspora, which is completely unfair. And the madman campaign that they have led into this war is disgusting. Now, I said there's multiple thoughts to be held at the same time here, so we're going to hold them. I will not shed a tear over Ayatollah Khamenei being dead. This was an awful man. Iran is a nation of approximately 92 million people. They have lived under an iron fist for the last 47 years. They have been tortured, imprisoned, and killed by their government, which duped them into a revolution in 1979 with false promises that they changed on day one. And the IRGC is a horrible organization of people, and I have said it publicly a million times, and I will continue to say it. I strongly hope the Iranian people rise up and take them out of power. Now listen to how I said that. That's how I've always said it. Because the reality is the world is a very complicated place. And I feel things very viscerally, but there are dictators, there are tyrants, and there are innocent civilians who die. It is a horrible thing. That does not mean that foreign nations like us, the United States, are therefore in a position to make things better by going in and doing regime change. Gaddafi was a bad guy in Libya. Look what happened when we did that. Saddam Hussein was an awful guy in Iraq. I would argue ISIS was a lot worse. That's what came after. Regime changes cause chaos. They foment chaos. And in many ways, that's the point. That's what your intelligence operations do. That's what the CIA does. Let's not single out Mossad here. That's what CIA does. That's what Mossad does. At the very least, it's what factions of them do. And we are seeing it play out once again. And we are seeing it play out at the behest of a country that has wanted to use us, the Americans, on the front lines to fight their wars. And so I do hope the Iranian people overthrow their regime. And I hope it happens after we fucking pull our troops right the fuck out of there. As of the time of this recording, there are 6 confirmed deaths of American soldiers. You know how much I care about our military guys. You know how much reverence I treat them with when they come in here. I love these guys. And I will fully admit I take their opinions, I give their opinions way more leeway than anyone else because they've earned it. They've done something that I never did. They volunteered to go serve their country. Many of them, obviously, who are in here, fought on the front lines, lost friends. These are sacrifices that I have never understood and that I hold in the utmost highest regard. And so when I see some of those guys, including kids, there was a 20-year-old in there who was killed in a war that was completely unnecessary. Started on a lie. Iran does not have nuclear weapons. They're nowhere close to it. I'm disgusted by that when I see that. Again, I'd love the Iranian regime gone. There's a lot of other things at play here. They are partnered on oil with China and Russia and other places. This is literally geographically and figuratively the center of the East-West conflict playing out right here. They are now looking at closing the Strait of Hormuz. Probably saying that wrong. That, is going to cause massive economic implications. By the way, that's why we did Venezuela. They were just preparing for the oil right there. Funny how we invaded Venezuela like 2 days after Netanyahu's hanging out with Trump at Mar-a-Lago for New Year's.
Gas prices are still going up too.
Yeah. And Trump was like, it'll be worth it to protect Israel. Listen, to see something from Israel's perspective, yes, Iran is in some ways a serious threat to them. They are not to the United States. Okay, we've seen it again and again. Paper tiger. They come out and they say death to America, death to Israel. They do all this stuff. And then when we hit them with anything, they don't do fuck all about it. Okay. We've seen it again. I mean, look at January 2020. We took out Qasem Soleimani. I remember getting reports behind the scenes about how up in arms people in the White House were that Trump did that. They thought it was so careless. And the Iranians blinked. They bombed a U.S. base or something. I don't even remember if we lost any people.
No, I'm pretty sure they bombed.
Check that
empty
deep. I
bases,
don't want to
right?
mess that up, but you get the point. They ain't like that, bruh. And so the thing about Iran is that they're an enemy. They're horrible people. But they tell you they're your enemy. They don't hide it. They stand right outside your house. Not literally, they stand across the world looking at your house on a fucking screen and do their propaganda and say death to America. And I can appreciate that I know where they stand. Not excusing it, think it's horrible. I know where they stand. They're a wolf. A wolf that don't got a lot of bite when it comes to us, but they're a wolf. On the contrary, when I see a country force all of our politicians to give hostage videos, basically, to say how much they love it and that they're our greatest ally, continually forcing us into wars that are not in our interest and costing our guys' lives at their behest, and blackmailing our people with things like the Epstein files, which also, again, CIA's got blame in that too. Let's not just point the finger at Israel. But when I see that, that to me is a wolf in sheep's clothing. They come to you and they tell you you're their friend. They walk in your front door. They eat dinner with you. Maybe they sit on your lap and let you pet them. They tell you it was a great meal. And then when they need to eat you, they eat you. And I'm seeing way too many patterns with that with the Israeli government. And I will say it that way. It's the Israeli government. I will never collectively hold people responsible for that. That's not what it is. We know a lot of the people in Israel don't support Netanyahu's government, and those are the hardliners. Those are the greater Israel people. But to see this play out as it is, you have to realize the world is based on power dynamics. All right? Iran, they ain't like that economically. I mean, we shut them off from the world. Scott Bessent bragged about Treasury Secretary bragged about all the new sanctions he put on him a few months ago or whatever it was, which forced the economy into turmoil. He bragged about sending their currency to basically zero, put the people in the streets, and then the regime, which is tyrannical, killed all the people. The regime deserves no exoneration for that, to be clear, but also, like, who's causing that and laughing about it? Does that sound like we're the good guys there? It doesn't to me.
No.
So you need to realize something like this has massive implications. Iran does not have nukes. Israel does. They're, of course, the only country that doesn't admit it. Used our stuff to get it in the 60s. Verified, NUMEC, look it up. But I don't appreciate the sheep clothing on the wolf. And there needs to be a serious conversation about the hijacking that the Israeli government is doing of not just our decision-making here, but of the Jewish people around the world. Because it makes me sick how uncomfortable it's getting for many of them, and I do not stand for that at all. And I will call that out. But I got no love for the Israeli government, and there's every piece of evidence to see that. Look no farther than the fact that this was reported, I believe, in Israeli outlets, American outlets. Obviously there's fog of war stuff, but the Israelis were spying on the Trump administration's communications with Iran, where they're trying to talk about peace. And Netanyahu called Trump, reportedly, to make sure he didn't negotiate peace. Fuck you. I'm not suicidal. I never have been. I love my life. Things are going great. I hope this war ends peacefully for all parties involved, including Israel, and I hope it ends quickly. And I hope new leadership can come in there, because I know a lot of their people want it, and I will support the Israeli people in getting new leadership over there, for sure. But it's on you guys, just like it's on the people of Iran to overthrow your government. It's on the Israeli people to look at doing that too. We'll close it there, and I'll see you guys next week.